Ray. What do you want to do tonight?
Same thing we do every night, Pinky. Try to take over the world.
Hey guys, we're excited to announce that the YouAreCreators podcast is brought to you by GoDaddy. GoDaddy is an awesome site where you can find the right name for your business. Hundreds of new domain names are available now, including .photography, .estate, and .guru. Create your website with GoDaddy's easy-to-use website builder. Even run your business anytime, anywhere with Microsoft 365 from GoDaddy. Visit GoDaddy.com and enter promo code CREATOR28 to save 28% on your order. Some limitations apply. See website for details.
This is Justin and Erica from YouAreCreators, and we have a special guest, Dr. Penny Satori. Welcome, Doctor.
Hi, lovely to be here.
Okay, so just to give the listeners a little background about who Dr. Satori is. Dr. Satori has worked as a nurse for the past 21 years, 17 of those years in intensive care. In 2005, Dr. Satori was awarded a PhD for her extensive research into the near-death experiences. She is the author of The Wisdom of Near-Death Experiences, which you can find on Amazon, and we will give you more information about that. Thank you so much for being here with us, Dr. Satori.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
All right. Now, Doctor, what is consciousness?
Well, that is the ultimate question, really. And I think the reason that I started doing my research was because I realized, first of all, that we didn't really understand death. You know, when you work in intensive care, you see a lot of patients who die, and sometimes you can see 3 or 4 people in one shift die. And it was one night shift when I was looking after a man who was clearly dying that really upset me, and I made a very deep connection with this patient, and it made me question what happens when we die. And I started reading about death, and then I came across near-death experiences, and I thought, do you know, these sound absolutely fantastic. They sound amazing. These people are saying that death is nothing to be afraid of. But I think because my nurse training was so scientific, it made me very skeptical of these experiences, and I thought they were just some sort of hallucination. But the more I read about them, the more intrigued I became. So I thought, well, I'll start my own research. I work in a perfect place. And as a result of doing my research, it made me question then, actually, what is consciousness? Now, when does consciousness begin and when does it end? And very often I get asked a lot about my research if it's to do with life after death. Well, that wasn't the intention of doing my research. It wasn't about that at all. It was learning more about the dying process. But I think through doing my research, it's led me to ask the question, what is consciousness? And I think at the moment, we don't really understand what consciousness is. And so I think we're living in very exciting times, because now we're asking these questions, and I think that we're investigating consciousness on a more serious level than we ever have done before.
Okay, so why is it that each near-death experience seems to be slightly different, just depending on the person?
Well, I think they're very much influenced by the person's upbringing and their individual cultural filters, really. So, for example, you know, they're very much culturally influenced. So in the West, people are more likely, when they're having this near-death experience, to have images maybe of Jesus Christ or Mary, whereas, say, people in India would have a slightly different experience, where it's very commonly reported that people in India see either Yamadoots, who are messengers of Yama, the god of the dead, or sometimes they see a man called Chitragupta, and he's called the man with the book, and this book is a book of the deeds of their life. And so it records everything that they've done, all the good and all the bad, and that kind of decides their fate, where they go after that stage.
So basically, what people believe seem to be their experience when they pass on.
Well, it's a lot to do with belief, but also as well with the cultural images that are around us all the time, that we take in on a very subconscious level as well. Sometimes that does have an influence. But again, there are some examples of young children who have these experiences that wouldn't necessarily have had these images either. So those are quite interesting cases as well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So has any of your patients ever spoke of heaven?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, a few of the cases that I had in my research in the hospital, there was one young man, and he described that when he was unconscious, he'd had this wonderful experience where it started off in just complete darkness, and then this light started to appear, and in this light was his dead grandfather, and he said his grandfather had looked very debilitated and unwell just before he died. But he said he looked really radiant, he looked very happy, and he looked healthy. And he said it went from beyond that, this light that was behind his grandfather, he then kind of bypassed that and went into another realm. And he said this place was lovely. He said it was everything that you would expect heaven to look like. This is what was there. This everything, it was perfect, it was loving, it was a lovely place. And he believed that he'd had a glimpse of heaven, if you like.
Okay, so has any of your patients ever reported seeing angels?
Yes, a few patients did. There was one lady in particular, and I can remember working on a night shift, and it was very quiet. It was about 3 a.m., and all of a sudden there was a noise, and her alarm started to go off on her monitor, and myself and my colleagues went to her bedside, and she'd woken up, and she was sitting up in bed, and her arms were outstretched like this, as if she was reaching out to someone. And she was staring ahead, almost as if she was in a trance-like state. And she started to smile, and it was as if she was trying to hug someone. Now, this lasted for about 2 to 3 minutes. And then when she came back and could communicate with us, she said that there'd been angels around her bedside and that she was trying to reach the angel. And there was another case of another man as well, and he was very critically ill, and he wasn't expected to survive, but he actually did survive, and he recalled seeing about 8 angels around his bed, and he felt very comforted by that. So they are seen quite regularly by patients.
Okay. So when we die, who or what will we see?
Well, I think that kind of depends really on our individual kind of background, and some people see things, some people don't see anything at all. So I think it's a very individual and subjective experience. But from the patients who I've spoken to, what was most commonly reported in my research was being greeted by dead relatives. And these relatives it was a very pleasant thing for them, and the people were very happy to see their relatives, and they did want to go with them as well.
Okay, so based on your research and your experience with your patients, what have you found out about religion, and do you think that the spirit world really cares about what religion you practice?
Well, that's interesting really, because when I kind of looked at all the different kind of religions, if you think about them all, they all say the same thing at the end, you know. They all still have that same core message, which is the golden rule, which is to treat others as you would wish to be treated yourself. So it's all about having respect and love and compassion for everyone as well as for yourself. And I think that's a very important message as well. So I think all religions say that same thing.
Okay. So basically, love is all that really matters.
Yes, that's what a lot of people say, and especially when they're having this near-death experience, they describe such feelings of deep, unconditional love that they've never experienced before, and they say it's such a wonderful feeling.
So do some people feel like they're going home, or if they have been there before?
Yeah, some people have described that actually. Some people, one man in particular said, you know, it was as if it was a familiar place. I'd been there before. I knew where I was going. I was home and I wanted to stay there. And very often they're sent back by the relatives or friends, and they don't want to go back because it's such a wonderful experience.
That's beautiful. I love it. Okay, so what are some special knowledge that you have gathered through all your research, Doctor?
Well, I think what I found with the research is that certainly these experiences happen. Now, when we look at previous research where it's been sort of reported anecdotally, it's very difficult to ascertain if the facts are correct because sometimes it happened many years previously. Now, when we do this research in the hospital, we've got the benefit of having the testimony of the staff who were present at the time to verify anything that the patients say. And we also have the medical notes just to assess how close to death these patients were. And what I found with my research is that there were some people who were clearly deeply unconscious, and their brains would have been in a severely physiologically insulted state, and they would have not been responding appropriately. Yet what these people described was a heightened state of awareness, and they described experiences that some of them viewed from an out-of-body perspective. Now, one man in particular had this. I was looking after him at the time, and during the time when he was deeply unconscious, he reported leaving his body and looking down from above. And he very accurately described everything that the doctor did, everything that I did as a nurse, and also what the physiotherapist was doing. Now, at this point, he wasn't responding to anything, and he was deeply, deeply unconscious. Yet I know what he reported was accurate because I was actually there at the time. And so when we have cases like this, it's very difficult to just explain them away as being due to a dysfunctional brain, because you wouldn't expect any conscious experience during that time. So I think that's a very important thing that I found with the research. And there was also another case of a patient where he had this near-death experience, and during his experience he communicated with a dead relative, and the relative gave him a message to go back to life, but to give this message to a living relative. So when he revived, he gave this message to his living relative, and she was astounded that he should know this information. It was information that she'd gone to great lengths to keep a secret, yet he discovered this during a time when, again, he was deeply unconscious. So I think what we're finding when you do hospital research is that you uncover cases that are not very easy to explain away. So I think we need to look at these in more depth and do a lot more research.
Okay, so Dr. Satori, based on your research and your patient experiences, do you believe that we are all connected to one another and God?
Well, that's a very interesting point, because that is very widely reported by people who have these near-death experiences. Now, one of the aspects of the near-death experience is a life review. And with a life review, the person actually relives their life, and sometimes all of their life, in very great detail, but they're only unconscious for a matter of seconds. So it's as if everything is going on at once, but they are reliving it. And sometimes they can relive their life from a third-person perspective, so they can feel the impact of their actions on other people. So if they've been particularly unpleasant to someone, or if they've been violent towards someone, they can feel what it's like to be on the receiving end of that. And conversely, if they've been really nice to someone, they can feel what it's like to receive that love. And so that gives them a completely different perspective on everything. And they sense that they have this knowledge of how their actions impact on other people. And ultimately, when they're doing things to other people, it has that impact on themselves. And they realize that there is this deep interconnectivity of everyone. So every one of us is very much deeply connected.
Okay. You know, I've read Embraced by the Light maybe 3 or 4 times. I love that book. And Betty Eadie says that each action acts as a ripple effect. Mm-hmm. And